Have you ever felt the weight of silence pressing against your chest? The kind of silence that makes you wonder if you've been forgotten. Maybe you've walked into rooms full of people and still felt invisible. Maybe you've looked at your phone, waiting for a call that never came, a message that never arrived, an invitation that never showed up. And in those quiet, lonely hours, you started to question your worth, your purpose, maybe even your faith. But what if I told you that isolation is not proof that you're abandoned? It's proof that you're set apart. You see, in the language of heaven, separation doesn't always mean rejection. Sometimes it's preparation. Sometimes the silence around you is God's way of speaking the loudest. And if you can begin to see your isolation not as a curse, but as a hidden proof of your calling, everything changes. Think about Moses. For 40 years, he wandered in the backside of the desert, far away from the royal palace, where he grew up far from the voices that once affirmed his identity. Alone with sheep, alone with his thoughts, alone with the memory of what he had done wrong when he struck down that Egyptian. To everyone else, it looked like Moses had been cast aside. But in God's story, those 40 years of obscurity were the training ground of humility, patience, and dependence. His isolation was not wasted time. It was the hidden proof that he was being set apart to carry a burden no ordinary man could carry. And you too have been through deserts. Maybe not the sandy kind, but the soul kind. Empty rooms, silent phones, long nights, and in those moments you thought God had left you. But what if he was shielding you? What if he was stripping away the noise so you could finally hear his whisper? What if the very absence of people was the evidence of his presence? Jesus himself tasted the sting of isolation. Before he began his public ministry, he was led by the Spirit into the wilderness, not for a day, not for a week, but for 40 days. No crowd, no applause, no disciples, just the sound of his own breath under the weight of temptation. The wilderness was not punishment, it was confirmation. It was the stage where his identity as the beloved Son of God was tested, proven, and solidified. His isolation was the announcement that he was set apart. And I want you to hear this. When God isolates you, he is not punishing you. He is sanctifying you. He is setting you apart for something that ordinary company cannot handle. And the reason you feel so misunderstood, so cut off, so unlike everybody else, is because you are not like everybody else. You are called. And calling always creates distance. But let's get real. When you are the one living in that isolation, it doesn't feel holy. It feels heavy. It feels like rejection. It feels like nobody sees you. You scroll through social media and see everybody else surrounded by friends, building families, chasing dreams, while you sit in silence and wonder, Lord, why me? And here's the truth. God is answering that question with your very circumstances. Why you? Because he trusts you with solitude. Because he knows that what he's birthing in you cannot survive in the noise of the crowd. He has to pull you away so that when you emerge, you'll know your strength comes from him alone. There's a reason diamonds are not formed in public. They're formed in the pressure and the dark away from the eyes of men. And there's a reason prophets rarely looked like celebrities. Jeremiah was called the weeping prophet because his path led him into loneliness and rejection. Elijah sat under a tree begging God to end his life because his calling put him on collision course with kings and false prophets. Paul spent years in Arabia after his Damascus encounter, hidden from the spotlight, before he ever wrote a single letter that would change the world. Isolation was never God's way of abandoning His people. It was always His way of forging them in fire. And here's what you need to remember. You don't grow roots in the sunlight. You grow roots underground. You don't build strength in the applause. You build it in the silence. So, if you're walking through a season of isolation right now, hear this as clearly as you can. This is not wasted time. This is sacred time. This is the hidden proof that you are set apart. Sometimes the loneliest rooms are the ones filled with people. You've felt that, haven't you? Sitting at a family gathering, a classroom, a conference table, even a church service, and everyone else seems to be connecting, laughing, weaving themselves into a story, while you sit quietly smiling on the outside, but inside wondering why you don't fit. And maybe you've blamed yourself. Maybe you've thought, something's wrong with me. I'm broken. I can't connect the way they do. But here's a secret. Heaven has been trying to whisper into your spirit, you don't fit because you were never meant to blend in. The discomfort you feel in the crowd is God's way of showing you that your identity is anchored somewhere higher. Think about Joseph. He was his father's favorite, clothed in a coat of many colors, carrying dreams that seemed bigger than the stars themselves. But the moment he shared those dreams, his brothers hated him. They conspired against him, sold him into slavery, threw him into isolation. And yet, every pit, every prison, every season of aloneness was not a detour. It was a design. Because it was in isolation that Joseph learned wisdom, patience, and dependence on God. When the time came for him to rise as second in command in Egypt, he carried not just authority, but character. What looked like abandonment was really alignment. And isn't that the pattern of your life, too? The very places where you thought you were being buried, you were really being planted. You didn't lose friends, God pruned them. You didn't miss opportunities, God redirected them. You didn't sit in silence because you were forgotten. You sat in silence because God was teaching you to recognize His voice above every other. Isolation is not the absence of God. It is the classroom of God. And in that classroom, He teaches lessons the crowd could never understand. He teaches you to pray without needing an audience. He teaches you to worship without a worship team. He teaches you to find peace when the room is empty, joy when the phone is silent, and purpose when the future feels uncertain. That's the kind of strength that can't be shaken because it wasn't built on applause. It was built on intimacy. Let's bring this closer. Maybe you've been overlooked at work. You've put in the hours, you've given your best, but promotions seem to pass you by. Maybe in relationships, you've watched people you love drift away, leaving you with questions that never get answered. Maybe in your faith, you felt like God was far off, like heaven turned its back when you needed it most. And everything in you wants to scream, "Why am I being left behind?" But what if God is not leaving you behind? He's holding you back because the weight you're designed to carry requires stronger shoulders. David knew this. Before he was the king, everyone celebrated. He was the shepherd boy. No one noticed. His brothers were invited to the lineup when Samuel came to anoint the next king. David wasn't even considered. He was left in the fields with the sheep. Imagine that the prophet shows up at your house, declaring that God is about to choose someone for greatness, and you don't even get called inside. But while his family overlooked him, God was developing him. In the silence of the fields, David learned to fight lions and bears. He learned to sing psalms that carried the fragrance of worship. And when the giant Goliath came striding across the battlefield, David wasn't unprepared. He was over-prepared. His isolation was the hidden training ground of his anointing. And that's your story too. You've been asking, why am I left out? But heaven is answering, so you can be set apart. Look at history. Every reformer, every revivalist, every leader God raised up spent seasons in obscurity. Martin Luther wrestled alone with Scripture before he nailed his theses to the church door. Mother Teresa walked the streets of Calcutta largely unnoticed before the world knew her name. Even in the modern world, testimonies abound of people who faced long years of rejection, loneliness, or quiet anonymity before stepping into their destiny. Their stories prove that isolation is not wasted time. It is preparation time. But let me tell you something personal. Isolation is also the birthplace of clarity. When the noise dies down, you discover what really matters. You find out which voices you truly need and which ones were distractions. Some of the greatest breakthroughs in your life won't happen when you're surrounded by cheerleaders. They'll happen when you're sitting alone with God and finally surrendering. Think of Jesus in Gethsemane, surrounded by disciples, yet utterly alone in his anguish. They fell asleep while he sweated drops of blood. His deepest battle was fought in isolation. And it was in that lonely place of surrender, not my will, but yours be done, that the fate of salvation was sealed. Your own moments of isolation are not small echoes of that garden. They are invitations to align your will with God's in ways you couldn't if the crowd was watching. So, let's make this practical. If you are in a season of isolation right now, don't waste it by wishing it away. Don't spend all your energy begging God to pull you out when He's trying to pull you deeper. Ask instead, Lord, what are you trying to form in me here? What roots are you growing underground? What strength are you developing in silence? Because if you can learn to embrace the hidden season, you will walk into the visible season carrying a strength the world cannot explain. There's a shift that happens when you stop seeing isolation as rejection and start seeing it as selection. Suddenly, you no longer measure your worth by who notices you. You no longer crumble when people walk away. You no longer panic when opportunities close, because you realize if God set you apart, no one can set you aside. There comes a moment in every calling where the loneliness feels unbearable. You'll want to quit. You'll want to say, if this is what it means to be chosen, I don't want it. And yet, even in that breaking point, God whispers, this is how I know you're mine. This is how I prove you're set apart. Because here's the truth. Ordinary lives don't require extraordinary preparation. But your life isn't ordinary. That's why your path has felt so narrow, why your friendships have been few, why your nights have stretched long. God doesn't waste pain, and He doesn't waste silence. If He's allowed isolation, it's because He's building intimacy. And intimacy is the foundation of authority. Think again about Paul. After encountering Jesus on the road to Damascus, he didn't immediately launch into ministry. He didn't rush to stages or pulpits. Instead, he spent years in Arabia, hidden learning reshaped by solitude. Only after that hidden season did he write words that would echo across centuries. I have learned the secret of being content in any and every situation. You don't learn contentment in the spotlight. You learn it in the shadows. And it's the shadows that become the evidence that you are set apart. Now, let's bring this closer to you. Look back at your life. Can you see the fingerprints of God in the times you thought you were abandoned? The friendships that ended suddenly, the job that slipped through your hands, the relationship that broke your heart. You thought those moments defined your rejection, but they defined your redirection. They marked the path where God was protecting you from something smaller because He had designed you for something greater. Maybe you're still in that season right now. Maybe you're watching this with tears in your eyes because you feel like you're on the outside of everyone else's story. You're scrolling through your feed, and all you see are engagements, promotions, vacations, celebrations. And you sit there thinking, God, why not me? Why am I still alone? Why am I still waiting? Why does silence surround me while everyone else seems to be living? Let me tell you, because you are not everyone else. The silence surrounding you is heaven's insulation. It's the hidden evidence that your life cannot be built on the shallow soil of comparison. You are set apart. But here's the challenge. Isolation can either break you or make you. It can drive you to bitterness, or it can drive you to breakthrough. It can leave you wallowing in self-pity, or it can propel you into deeper prayer. It can convince you you're forgotten, or it can convince you you're chosen. The choice is yours. And if you choose to see it the way heaven sees it, everything changes. Suddenly, your bedroom becomes a sanctuary. Your tears become prayers. Your silence becomes strength. Your waiting becomes worship. And the very things you thought disqualified you, the loneliness, the rejection, the obscurity, become the proof that God has His hand on you. Let me remind you of something. Even Jesus was misunderstood by His own family. His own brothers didn't believe in Him at first. His disciples abandoned Him in His darkest hour. The crowd that once shouted Hosanna later shouted, "Crucify Him." If the Son of God Himself faced isolation, why should you think it's strange that you do too? Your loneliness is not proof that you are less. It is proof that you are following in His footsteps. And those footsteps always lead to resurrection. You see, resurrection power is not given to the crowd. It's given to the one who endured the grave. And graves are lonely places. But graves are also temporary places. Your season of isolation will not last forever. The stone will roll away. The dawn will break. And when it does, the very people who forgot you will wonder how you survived. And you'll know the answer because you were never alone. So here's the takeaway. Stop despising your isolation. Stop treating it like wasted time. Start seeing it as sacred time. The desert is your training ground. The silence is your sanctuary. The rejection is your redirection. The loneliness is your proof. You are not abandoned. You are set apart. And as you carry that truth, let it shape the way you walk tomorrow. Don't wake up angry at who left you. Wake up grateful for who stayed, and even more grateful for the God who never left. Don't measure your life by the noise of others. Measure it by the stillness of His presence. Don't waste another minute wishing you were part of the crowd when God has called you to stand apart from the crowd. And if this message stirred something in you, don't let it fade when the video ends. Take a moment, reflect, Ask yourself, what is God teaching me in my isolation? What roots is He growing in me underground? Write it down. Pray it out. Let your isolation become your revelation. Because one day, when you step into the fullness of what God has been preparing you for, you'll look back at this season and realize it was not punishment. It was proof. Proof that you were chosen. Proof that you were called. Proof that you were set apart. So, let me speak this over you. Right now, your isolation is not the end of your story. It's the beginning of your strength. You may feel hidden, but you are not forgotten. You may feel small, but heaven sees you as significant. You may feel alone, but you are surrounded by the love of God. And when the time is right, He will bring you out of the shadows and into the light, not because you chased the crowd, but because you embraced the calling. So, hold on. Stay faithful. Keep trusting. Your isolation is the hidden proof that you're set apart. And if this message touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe for more words of hope. And most importantly, take this moment to reflect and let God remind you, you are not alone. You are chosen. You are set apart.